Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to SP Reviews, where today I'll be checking out some tracks off of an album titled Serendipity by an act named Future Prophecy. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves the album on Music B. We've got various tracks here. This is 3 of the tracks off the album. I believe there are 6. So listening to the first half of the album today. I'm not sure which tracks we're listening to, but that's fine. Well, kind of an extended sort of like long play of them as one whole sort of like variation. So we're going to listen through these 3 tracks from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go. Excellent work starting with those sci-fi sounds. Instant clarification of the quality of the performance that we're working with here, the effervescence of that audio engineering there, the wonder of the nature of Foley, with the quiet cicadas and the opera vocals. The soprano is absolutely gorgeous.
Must be regarded as indisputable evidence of intelligence at work in certain deeper parts of the oceans. He also insisted that because of the extreme conditions of the environment, no intelligent form of life could have evolved several thousand feet down.
That's interesting. So we're talking about creatures in the ocean. Is this an ode to the sea? Interesting use of these really kind of chilled out, playful electronic drums here. I don't know how to describe that groove. It was around in like a lot of the 90s and early 2000s of music. I like the natural sort of like raise in the automation of the volume there. I think that's kind of dope. And the pan flutes coming in with that are absolutely sensational with the reverb tails they have on them and a bit of delay. Great amount of dynamic range. Oh, and vocals. Oh, really funky bass line down on that low end as well. Working between those triad notes there. I suppose that'd be a synthesizer or a sequencer of some sort, wouldn't it? Nice use of modulation here with the vocals to sweeten up the end of the stanza. I'm trying to figure out how they treated the vocals. Was there a bit of melodyne on there or something like that just to get that steady sort of change in texture? And those synth pads are absolutely glorious there. Wonderful quality to them. They sound very professional. And how the sound spread around the stereo field as well. It's so atmospheric and the leveling is really well handled here. You can hear everything nice and clearly within the mix. I want a choir to do a call and response with the main vocalist now. Clever development. Okay, we've got a similar sort of phrasing texturally to what we had with the previous verse, where we go for that modulated kind of distorted part and then back into the normality with that extra bar. And that's the power of like having dynamic range in a mix. Because you know that really sharp texture we had before? There was something in there that was kind of whistling, and if we hadn't lowered the volume on that, it would have been a bit too sharp in relation to everything else in the mix. Clever stuff on the studio side for sure. You know, really lovely use of these major and minor chords. Maybe a little bit of 7th extensions in there, but no flat fifths or anything. Obviously, it's very palatable.
He also insisted that because of the extreme conditions of the environment, no intelligent form of life could have evolved several thousand feet down.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I suppose, to be fair, it would be difficult for life to develop right in the Mariana Trenches, you know? Interesting concept. Oh, we're flicking the ring straight into the second one. It's nice to get a good idea and grasp of the width of this, stylistically, this album, Serendipity. I like the fact we came down a little bit for this last track and at the end, and now we're moving into something completely differently. I think it's great transition there, very smooth. Oh, that piano line there, sounding a little bit sort of a little bit dangerous. So something to be sort of concerned about. And these tribal vocals are absolutely phenomenal. They're very appropriate for the style of music we're going for. Sort of psychedelic electronic stuff. Not necessarily psychedelic, but like the heavily atmospheric kind of sort of trippy out there stuff. They're going for a specific vibe and they're achieving it. Okay. I like the fact that we've got the bass coming in here to sort of clear up the low end as everything's been very sort of misty and well filtered and EQ'd up in that mid-high range. Plenty of range down here for these sort of industrial synths to come in and kind of smother the low end. A little bit of sharpness there, a little bit of kind of slams those compressors. Don't know why we went up to the top, by the way. I don't know when Music Bee did that, but it needs to stop doing that. Shout out to the technicality and proficiency of that piano performance there. That's probably one of the most technical parts I've heard today. The notes coming through nice and clearly. Really smooth. A little bit of extra sort of intensity with the speed and the groove of those notes there, without it taking too much of the focus away from the vocals in the center. Really smart. Kind of highlighting the chord progression in the background there with those melodic sections. Yeah, really simple, easy to follow bass line there. Sort of carried along by the 8th note. 16th note drum groove on those hi-hats and chord note accents. 1, 3, 4, and 8th note group. It's charming though. I honestly don't really need to have context on the vocals to be able to appreciate the musical accompaniment behind it. Some really interesting sounds there as well. Those harmonized sort of bass parts there. Sort of future bassish kind of stuff going on there. It's fun. We've got harmonies with like 2s or 4ths. And that low subtle like repeater. Rolling with that root note, along with the shakers. Again, great attention to detail with the automation of the panning there. And track number 3, I suppose. Again, we've got more of these pianos in with those long notes there, staying away from the faster arpeggios or broke-chords we've done before there. We've had several different bass elements come back, like I think this was in the first one as well. More vocal chops to add extra ambience. Call a response between the two different sort of pitch layers. Kind of can just come in and out, and it's almost hypnotic. How you got that oscillation in the volume and energy levels within the track there. It's really easy to get sort of lost in it. I think that's the point of this kind of music. You're supposed to get enveloped by it, sucked into its world. Oh, lovely tension with that flick second. Ah, that ba ba ba. I've heard that used in songs and never really felt that that tone has the correct context, but this is one of those situations where I can understand why that would work there, you know? It's nice to have some English in here. It's nice to have some English. I'm not really sure what the context of this is fully, how it relates to the rest of Serendipity, but maybe it's the same message plastered over different languages. I don't really feel like I've said as much in this one as I probably should have or would have. I just wanted to let the music speak for itself. I've got comments to make on it, but I think I've kind of also figured it out at the same time. I don't want to reiterate too much, especially in tracks that are largely instrumental. There's a little bit of a swing rhythm to this little dancing synth on top of here, which adds a nice little sort of change or distinction that we haven't had yet. Most of it's been straight 4/4. We've got the sound of the water coming back from where we came from. Great choice there, man. Great choice. Future Prophecy with their album Serendipity. Wonderful, fantastic, really classy way to finish things and end it out. And this is my conclusion of Serendipity, the album by Future Prophecy. 2023, man, it's a great start to the year. I've gotten the opportunity to review a lot of really strong music, a lot of really strong tunes. Overall, you know, I think the music industry is in a great place, you know, despite some obvious issues. It's, you know, a lot of really cool music coming out, and this is no exception. Future Prophecy's Serendipity, from what I hear, especially with the talk at the start about like the lack of like intelligent life at like 7,000 below or something like that, sort of discussing where we all came from, to then have the water at the end kind of makes me wonder whether it's talking about the journey of ourselves, our energy passing from the water to the rest of the world, and then us ending up at the depths at the end, allowing us to be set free back to the water. Whether Serendipity is talking about, I mean, because serendipity, as I understand it, like something serendipitous, something beneficial occurs maybe unexpectedly alongside something else. So maybe we're exploring concepts of serendipity within these sort of like more sort of natural elements here. Or maybe it's more of a spiritual kind of thing, you know? Either way, with the vast majority of this track not in English, it was kind of difficult to like kind of get a grasp of what it was about without sort of making some big assumptions or filling in the blanks. You know, letting go, setting me free, etc., stuff like that we heard in the last track of the three. I think that we had some really cool sort of like concepts of like whether that's ourselves as a spiritual letting ourselves go and allowing ourselves not to be confined and constrained by the bonds of our world, or whether it's literally a decision we're making to go back into the ocean or something like that. I'm not sure. I think it's figurative and metaphorical for something, you know. But still, you know, I think you know, where the vocals did come in, they were incredibly atmospheric and offered a great sort of sense of extra sort of polish and sparkle to the track. When we did have the English vocals, they were spoken clearly. You know, you could easily hear the words come out. They had a great presence in the mix. Regardless of whether they were in English or not, you had wonderful vocal performances from everyone involved. You know, like not just with like the choir and opera parts and the choir going back to the main part in the first song, but you also just had a great control of the head and chest voice, and whether it was a melody or a harmony, you know, you were never left out of luck. You know, with the call and responses we had occasionally as well, sort of the more sort of like musical ways of expressing ourselves vocally, using our vocals as an instrument. There's a lot of that within this album too, and I really appreciate that. I think we understood clearly what the use of a voice was for, and we knew how to use it in many different ways that were appropriate. We understood how to get the accompaniment to work well with that and make it meaningful for the song, whilst also keeping it artistic enough for it to be subjective. So well done to Future Prophecy on that front. I think that the story of the album, I would consider my best shot at it, was carried well throughout. You know, like we had lots of interesting instruments here. Like we not only had like the voiceover with the life form in the sea and everything like that, but we also had lovely sounds of the ocean. So I mean, the foley was good, but it wasn't just that. You know, the sounds of those different drum kits we had, the basses, some of the modulators, sort of guitars we had that weren't necessarily playing like hard chords, but it was just the fizz and the strum of them and the vibe of them, alongside all the different sort of synth leads and pads we had, the pan flutes, everything else, the fun sort of like mid sort of later synth parts that kind of had more of an harmony to them, like polysynths. There was so many different tones that we had in here. We managed to amalgamate them incredibly well into an album like this. I think that it was spectacular, really. With Future Prophecy, they clearly have a fundamental understanding of music theory and composition, and they use that to their full extent here in a way that was by no means disappointing. We have a musician here, or musicians, who not only understand how to cover the fundamentals of songwriting, but they also know exactly how much they can have something before needing to take it away. There was constant movement and shifting and changing of these sort of things in each of the tracks that made them unique and distinct, but at the same time, never felt like too much. You know, it felt, even though there was a little bit of chaos occasionally, it wasn't in a way that was like offensive or anything like that. It was just, you know, like with the changes that we had, it was almost like, yeah, no, I get that we're still trying to be relaxing, but we're finding the midpoint there, and that was great. It's really cool. You know, it's really great to hear someone who can produce music like this in a way that is this interesting without the needing to have clear vocals, especially if the lyrics are in another language or something like that. But I think part of it is also that we understood which instruments to use that notched well with others. We never had too many sort of like ingredients sort of within the same frequency spectrum where they were kind of arguing with one another and creating sort of icky kind of resonant frequencies or anything like that. It was great, and we got lots of use of different rhythms. Like we mostly had straight 4/4s, quarter eighths and 16ths, but then occasionally we had some sort of swingy bits like in the last part there with the fun little groove at the end. And you know, honestly, like the transitions between these tracks, like for a 40-minute track, it definitely didn't feel like 40 minutes or 3 songs. It felt like one big song the whole way through. The shift between 1 and 2 was more seamless than the track between 2 and 3, but I could understand the concept of why we're putting these 3 tracks together today. I've got absolutely no issues with it whatsoever. With this album, Serendipity by Future Prophecy, fantastic, you know. Really incredible album art as well. I haven't really seen art like that in a long time, and I think it's fantastic. Nice styling for that. Now, when I hear this track, I look to the recording, studio production, the mixing and mastering of it, and I think, man, this is damn near flawless. It's so clean and pristine. This is someone who not only knows how to get the best out of their instruments and vocals, but also knows how to make it sound like a major label put it out. And like that's in the best possible way, I mean, not like as in like the overcompressed, saturated stuff you get a lot of the time nowadays. So sanitized stuff you get nowadays, but like it still had its essence and magic and fervor, but as well it also just had a shimmer and a sheen to it that was still quite unique even in a day and age where it's possible to get a hold of a lot of the stuff that makes quote unquote professional music sound professional nowadays at a much lower price. I think that the barriers to entry have been lowered, and that's a blessing and a curse, depending on which side of the field you're on. But yeah, we absolutely smashed out the recording of the various instruments. The EQing and filtering was fantastic as well. I don't know if they were samples or like recorded manually by our instruments. I don't really mind. It still sounded great. It was very difficult to tell the difference between samples and with certain instruments nowadays, and I think that's just testament to the quality of what people are doing nowadays with their sample packs that they're giving away or selling, you know. So good on them for doing that. I think that in terms of what was going on with you know, the size of it in stereo field, it was nice and wide and things would move around backwards and forwards. You know, things wouldn't stay in one place unless they needed to keep the groove going or unless it would make the song just on that side of like not so chaotic that it gets too much, which I adore. I think that we found a great balance with even the automation, panning and volume aspects there. We had fade outs and sort of rises into it, but we never used it too much that it became stale. We made sure that the themes were interesting when we were there, and just honestly I'm really stoked with it. You know, there was lots of dynamic range to the recording as well, which made it nice and easy and pleasurable to listen to. The leveling of different instruments, the mix was great. There was nothing that sounded too loud or too sort of like obtuse or anything like that. The limiting compression was absolutely sensational. And this is my review of my, you know, checking out this Future Prophecy album, Serendipity. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go check out their various social medias, and I'm sure this will be on all digital stream platforms soon, if not at the moment. And stay cool and stay safe. Please remember, support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as we need the help, or as they need the help more than ever with all the great stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.